we wake, hear the birds and see the sun. Side by side our fears are done. Oh, the good times just begun. Oh, we know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel. We have an amazing DIY video for you today. And don't forget to leave us a comment on what you think about our project. We love hearing from you all. There's a lot to share, so let's just get right into it. I've been really working hard on planning the design of the interior spaces of our new house, which seems premature, I know, but it actually isn't. If you think about it, you really do need to plan out where things are going to be placed because it may impact the build itself, like wall lighting or reinforced areas for heavier objects, spacing for furniture and such. So today our DIY project is something we've created for our master bathroom. I'm going to walk you through our 3D model of our master bath entry, but bear with me because I'm not so great at maneuvering through the spaces on this program. I just hope we don't end up in the ceiling or a wall, or even under the house, which has happened. You enter our master bath from our bedroom through these double doors, which I would love to hang antique wood doors here if our budget allows. That may be a project for the future after we've moved in and saved up. In planning this space, I wanted our bathtub to be a beautiful focal point since it is the first thing you see as you enter the bathroom. The original plan called for a glass wall behind the tub that would allow you to see into the shower, but I didn't like that idea. I didn't want the shower to be the backdrop to my tub and the light I wanted to hang above it, so I had them make it a solid wall. But that created a new challenge since it gave the appearance that our bathroom just stopped behind the tub, which made the space seem smaller than it is. As you can see, our bathroom is split into a his and her side. But since the wall behind the tub was causing me some design issues, I had to give it some serious thought. And I decided, why not a mirror to open up the space and give it the appearance of more depth behind the tub? But it couldn't just be any mirror. I wanted something that had the appearance of being a window. I even want to hang a rod above the mirror and some beautiful curtain panels on either side to really give it a moment. Like I said, this really is the first impression of our bathroom, and I wanted it to set the mood for the rest of the space. I'm doing polished nickel faucets for the sink and shower. Not sure yet on the tub, but we'll talk on that in another video. I just knew that the lighting and the tub were my main characters to design around, so I set out to find the perfect mirror to buy. I had a specific look in mind for the type of mirror I wanted. I knew that it needed to be a window pane mirror so that it gave the appearance a window was behind the tub, even though there are some other beautiful options to choose from, and some that are really, really popular. I also knew I wanted the mirror to appear antiqued, and it needed to be overly large, so that narrowed down my search quite a bit. I ultimately decided on this mirror. I loved the shape, the antiqued look, and the general simplicity of it, but when I saw the price tag, I almost fell over. This mirror can be found on multiple sites like Pottery Barn and even Amazon, but the pricing varied from around $1,400 to $1,200, with one site even selling it for over $2,000. I knew that I needed my furniture budget for furniture because we need new sofas and things to actually sit on, so paying that kind of money for a decor item seemed out of the question until I asked Corey if he could make it. And well, he said, of course. The initial steps in planning for this project were to figure out what size mirrors we could buy that wouldn't break the bank. Buying one full-size mirror was out of the question cost-wise, so we knew it would have to be multiple mirrors. Getting the right size to make this mirror work was a little challenging, and we also needed non-beveled mirror. Corey found some at Home Depot. The brand is Shape Glass. They measured 30 inches by 36 inches and cost $26.48 per mirror. I will give a total cost breakdown of this project a little later. Once he had the mirror measurements, he sat down and sketched out the schematics of the framework and overall design based on what I wanted it to look like. The inspiration mirror measures 42.25 inches by 82 inches. Our mirror ended up at 50 inches by 92 inches. Corey first began by cutting one of the 30 by 36 inch mirrors into thirds, each measuring 12 by 30 when done. We wanted to keep the price down, so buying multiple mirrors instead of one large piece of mirror kept our cost to a minimum and was much easier to handle. He then clamped a guide to the mirror to help keep his scoring tool straight. You can certainly make a smaller mirror and skip this step to make this project much easier. Corey has cut mirror and glass before, so he was familiar with the process and felt comfortable in doing this. Be sure to wear gloves and safety glasses, as the glass can become sharp and jagged or splinter into shards. This is the scoring tool he used to cut the mirror. These can be found at any hardware store. And note, you can only score the mirror or glass once. You can't go over the line, so make sure to use firm, even pressure and pay attention to the edges of the mirror, as they may not score as cleanly and cause uneven breakage. Corey used a snow marker he had on hand to place under the scored area to help in snapping the mirror more cleanly. You can use a long wooden dowel. The dowel should be placed near the line, but just over it to one side or the other. Corey always placed it on the far side of the line from where he was standing to keep the snap clean. And then, with gentle but firm pressure, push down on the piece of glass on either side of the score line. He then repeated the process to create the second and third piece of 12 by 30 mirror. In order to keep his design straight in his head, Corey measured and sketched out his overall design on the plywood sheet that would become his backer to the mirror. It helped when doing placement for the whole project. He next needed to cut an arch, or rather an angle, at the top pieces of the mirrors because the frame is arched ever so slightly at the top. Corey made his marks and measured to make these cuts to the mirrors. He repeated the entire scoring process again. Now, if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that we didn't get the dowel on the back side of the scored line, but at the top it is behind the line, so this cut won't be as clean. Just shows you how important it is to have that dowel on the same side of the line the entire length of the mirror. This minor defect won't make a difference as the frame will cover it. Corey did a quick placement check to make sure he was on target for the project, and it all checked out. Let me start by saying that neither of us had ever attempted to antique a mirror before, and so we did some research, and the consensus seemed to suggest using a paint stripper to rid the backing of the mirror, but that method did not work for us. So Corey decided to use a low grit sandpaper 220 to strip the backing from the mirror. Now you only want to take it down to the orange backing or the mirrored effect, so be careful when sanding. We did take it past the orange in certain areas because that is where the antiqued effect comes in, but we'll show you that here in a bit. This does make a huge dust mess, so be sure you are in a well-ventilated area, wear your face covering, and we also suggest hooking the hose of your shop vacuum to the sander to keep the dust to a minimum. You'll also notice that we ended up with two different mirrors, some with blue acrylic backing and others with the typical mirror gray backing, even though we purchased from the same store and they were the same brand. We found out that the gray backing was much easier to remove. This becomes really important later, but I wanted to point it out now. Once you've got it to the desired effect, you'll want to stop and clean off any of the surface dust before moving on to the next step. After wiping them down, we started the antiquing process of spraying them with a bleach water solution of 1 part bleach to 3 parts water. We gave the surface olive fine misting and then went back and created certain areas with heavier solution to make them appear more aged. You do want heavier drops, so don't worry if that happens. We allowed it to sit for 10 to 15 minutes, but watch your mirror to make sure it isn't blackening too quickly. Every mirror is different, as we are about to find out. It was at the 10-minute mark that we noticed the mirror with the blue backing was not changing at all, but the mirror with the gray backing was blackening as it should. At the point you like the effect, you'll want to clean the mirror with water to remove the bleach solution. After that, we went in with a window cleaner to make sure all the bleach was neutralized. Here's the gray backed mirror after the bleach solution. And here is the blue backed mirror. This one is far more spotted and less antiqued in appearance. It was now that we realized we needed to get all the same mirror with the gray backing because they looked completely different, and we didn't want our finished project to have some of the mirror looking one way and the rest looking another, since this mirror will be a part of our new home. So Corey headed off to Home Depot to find us 2 more mirrors for our project, which did add to our overall cost, exactly $52.96 more. So just a word to the wise, only get gray backed mirror. Once he got back, he began the process of antiquing the newly purchased mirrors, repeating the steps all over again. I wanted a heavily antiqued mirror more so than the inspiration, but you can certainly do as little or as much distressing as you would like by lessening the time the bleach is on the mirror. The next step in our antiquing process was to give a light spray to the entire backside of the mirror with a bronze or gold spray paint to give that antique look on the areas that the solution ate away at the mirrored effect. We chose to use Behr's antique brass for this step. Make sure to use a light even coat, as you'll follow up this step with a black spray paint, and you'll want some of that black color seeping through in spots. And the one coat is all you'll need of both colors. Once the antiqued underlayer of paint had dried, the final coat of matte black by Behr was added. And here is how that aged effect will look when done. You'll want to make sure you allow the paint to dry between and after each application before moving on with the project. To create a template to cut out the arch for the top of the frame, Corey placed a screw at the bottom edge of the backer board and tied a piece of string to it. He then wrapped a pencil around the string and used that as a guide to create the arch onto a piece of cardboard. Corey determined the amount of arch based on the measurements at the top where the mirror ended. He knew he needed to cover the mirror, so he measured out his bottom point of his arc and made the arch based on that. He then measured the width and created the top arc for the frame. For a tighter arc, you would simply move the screw up or shorten the string. He then cut out his template to transfer it to the 1x8 inch pine board. Corey added tape to the outer edges of his template to keep the cardboard from breaking down as he traced the pattern. Now, just to make things even more difficult, most of Corey's tools are buried in our storage unit, and so he's trying to get by with the tools he has on hand, but it's made things challenging. His clamps aren't large enough, but the ones he needs are somewhere in storage, and the small sawhorses he has here are not really sturdy enough for the job he's trying to accomplish. So yeah, it's been challenging to say the least. He did clamp the two 1x8 pine boards together so that he only had to cut once. We'll go over how the second board comes into the project a bit later. He ultimately ended up placing some screws to secure the boards together before cutting. Then, using his jigsaw, he cut the two boards in the shape of the arc for the frame. Again, Corey is checking his work, and so far it's all looking great. He then gave the two boards a good sanding. Next, Corey needed to cut one of the arched boards in half to allow for the mirror to butt up against it, while the other full arched board will sit on top to hide the top of the seam of the mirror. With the top of the frame done for now, Corey turned his attention to the sides of the frame and creating the buttons. Now, since I want a round edge to everything, once he gets all the pieces assembled, he'll have to use a router to create the look I want. Because the pine boards are cheap, they are rough and uneven, so Corey put them through his planer to give them a clean edge. He ran each cut pine board through on each side, so 4 times per board. Corey once again checked all his measurements and made any adjustments as needed. For ease of cutting channels for the buttons to fit together, Corey taped the 3 longer ones together by securing them with painter's tape so that he could make the cuts. Once again, he made sure his measurements weren't off by placing a piece of the mirror down to see if the buttons would overlap the seams before he began the process of gluing and nailing the frame together. He also counterset the nails so that they could be filled later before sanding. He also made sure to nail from the underside of the framing grid. Just as he did with the top arch of the frame, Corey also used an underpiece of framing to hide the sides of the mirror and bulk up the frame if seen from the side profile. Next, to finish off the top of the plywood backer, he cut the arch he had drawn earlier to mimic the shape of the frame. He then gave everything a once-over with his shop vac. Corey then began the process of putting the entire frame together. He did a dry fitting first to be sure that he didn't need to make any adjustments before gluing and nailing to keep everything secure. He built the frame with the backside facing up. The entire frame was left overnight so that the wood glue had time to set. Once everything had dried, Corey gave the entire frame a quick sand to be sure it was smooth. Since he would be using a router to round the edges, he didn't want the router to catch on anything. He made sure no nails were protruding and that all the rough edges were sanded down. He also filled in any holes and imperfections before sanding it again. He used the router to create a rounded edge to the frame and muttons. I can't believe how good the frame turned out, but again, I should never doubt my husband. We started with a matte black primer, giving it one thorough coat, which Corey then sanded once again to be sure there weren't any rough spots left before going in with the final paint colors. Corey also decided to give the underside a coat of black primer in case the mirror reflected the underside of the muttons. He didn't want the raw wood showing. Once the primer had dried overnight, he painted the first coat of Rustoleum's warm gold. Now the inspiration piece is actually a metal framed mirror, but we couldn't recreate that, not without buying a welder, and I really think that the wood frame lends more toward my style anyway. The inspiration piece also has a very aged bronze color, but I'm choosing to give ours a more aged brass appearance. He gave it 2 coats of the warm gold for a nice even finish, allowing to dry completely in between coats. Again, be sure you are in a well-ventilated area. If not, be sure to wear a respirator. We let the mirror cure for 24 hours before going in to age it with a mix of matte black spray paint and Behr's antique brass. Corey sprayed on the black, going heavier in the corners of the frame and lightly misting the rest. I blotted the paint as we went with a clean cloth that is free from lint to diffuse the effect and blend it out. We made sure to work in small sections so that the paint wouldn't set up before we could blend it. We then went over the whole frame one more time with a very light misting of Behr's antique brass and satin to just mute everything and tone down the darkness of the black. And I love how it all turned out. Once the paint had dried for 48 hours, we began the last of the process, attaching the mirror to the plywood. Corey used liquid nails to adhere the mirror, making sure to keep it well away from the edges so that it wouldn't ooze out and create an issue with the rest of the mirror placement. He continued until he had all the mirrors in place. He also made sure to leave a tiny gap that he will later fill with silicone, just to make sure that the mirrors would never rub against each other and cause chipping and cracking. Finally, it was time for the silicone. We used GE's brand of advanced window and door silicone in black. He ran a bead along each seam and allowed to dry overnight. The last step to complete our project was to attach the frame to the mirror, and we were racing against the snow and negative temperatures that were forecasted to hit our area that very day. Corey needed to run a bead of silicone on the underside of the frame to attach to the mirror, but before he could, I needed to make sure the surface was free of dust and debris. The last step was to attach the frame to the mirror. Once we had the frame in place, we weighted it down evenly with some of Corey's toolboxes to dry overnight. I think at this point he was just praying that it all turned out because he had been working on this project for over a week. The next day, Corey did some last-minute cleanup with any silicone that may have oozed out, using a razor blade to remove it carefully from the mirror and frame. Corey had also wanted to add metal straps to the back for added security, but the snow had hit and we figured we could add them later because we really wanted to share this with you now. But just know that it would be a good idea to affix some straps to secure the back of the mirror to the frame, especially if you plan to hang it. And here is our finished project. It is far more beautiful than I could have ever expected. I love it so much and I can't wait to hang it in our new master bathroom. Thank you all so much for being with us today. We hope you found this video informational and that it gave you some inspiration to tackle some DIYs around your own home. Just know that you can simplify this project by purchasing molding already made instead of creating it yourself. And you can also do a much smaller mirror. Maybe you have one in your home now that you would like to try to antique. I encourage you to give it a try. If you liked today's video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone you know. And if you're new here, please subscribe to our channel and join our growing YouTube family. We would love to have you along on our journey. Don't forget to tell us what you think of our new mirror. Your comments are a bright spot in our day. And as always, you are so very appreciated, and we will see you all soon in the next one. Corey and I wish you a wonderful week ahead. Bye for now.
We got it.